Now that we know how to manipulate objects in Unity, let's take a look at a game object that we can actually see within our camera. You'll notice here that if I select my main camera, I can actually see a camera preview, which is the exact representation of my game view. I'm going to select my main camera and I'm going to reset the transform. That's going to zero everything out. Typically in a video game, you're going to set the camera Z position to -10 so that it's further back from the actual objects that are initially going to be at 0, 0, 0 in our environment. This is going to allow it to actually see the object. So I set that to -10 just by selecting it and typing in -10. Our directional light can stay where it is, and we'll see how that adjusts game objects in a moment. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create an object, or a game object, same thing. The way we do that is you can go to the top here and select game object, and you can create a 3D object. Unity provides a handful of primitive objects that can help us create rapid prototypes. So I'm going to create a cube, and it's going to spawn a cube directly in the center of our screen. I'm going to select the position and just set the values to 0 on the X, use the tab key to go over 1, 0 on the Y, and 0 on the Z. If I look in the game view, I can see my cube. As well as in the scene view, if I select the main camera, I can see the cube in the preview. With the cube selected, let's go ahead and take a look at moving it around using the translate tool, which is the tool here, or the W key. That's our move tool, and you'll see here that I can actually move it to the left, and in the game view, it's moved to the left. I can move it to the right, and preview that change here. Let's try the rotation tool. I can go ahead and rotate this object along any axis I want, and in the game view, you'll see here that it's been rotated. The next tool is the scale tool, and if I select it, go back into the scene view, I can go ahead and scale this object on an individual axis, or I can scale it proportionately by left-clicking in the center and choosing how to scale this object. If we view it in the game view, you'll see here that we have our cube scaled. So that wraps up how to quickly and easily just visualize manipulating an object. And the next thing that I want to show you is how to create materials in Unity. Let's say here that I wanted to turn the color of this cube to red. Before we can do that, let's take a look at the components that make up the cube. You'll see here that it has a transform, which every game object has. You'll notice that the main camera, directional light, and the cube all have a transform. It has a position, rotation, and scale value. It also has a mesh filter component, which defines the geometry for the game object. It has a mesh renderer, which actually provides the visual representation of the game object. If I were to toggle this off, our game object disappears. It's still active in the environment, but we just can't view it. So the mesh renderer allows the main camera to draw that object. You'll see here that the mesh renderer has a default material, which is how we can actually adjust the color. And you'll see here that it has a box collider, which will allow it to interact with our environment. To get started with creating a material, let's create a materials folder inside of the project view. Remember that the project view is where all of the assets that are available to us are stored and created. So to create a new material, we're first going to create a material folder by right-clicking in the project view. Going to create, and we're going to create a new folder. And let's name it materials. Within that folder, we're going to right-click it, go to create, and you'll see here that we have a material selection. And that's going to allow us to create a new material. And let's go ahead and call this cube_mat. The _mat is a best practice naming convention. The reason for that is imagine in a full-fledged video game how many materials you might have. A material is anything that provides a visual representation for a game object. Some feature-length video games might have 4,000 plus different materials. And if I need to search for materials, I need to be able to use the search box inside of the project view and type _mat to view all of my materials. And that's what that will provide us. So with this material, if I select it, you'll see here that in the inspector view, we have a few changes going on. So right here, we have a main map and an albedo channel. This material here is called a standard shader. A shader is simply just a material that can be attached to a game object. So with the cube material selected, we can change the color of the material through what's called the albedo channel. And when I click that, it opens up this color wheel. And I can go ahead and simply change that cube to red by just dragging this in. If I want a purplish color, I can use this circle here, and I'm gonna go ahead and select a kind of blue color. Once I'm happy with the color, I can simply just close it out, and you'll see here that the material is now blue. To turn our cube blue, I have two options. I can go into the scene view, and I can simply left click and drag it over the object, and if I release the left click, it will then apply it to the object, or I can drop it directly on the object in the hierarchy. As soon as you release, we now have a blue cube. If you select the cube and head over to the inspector, you'll notice here that the materials actually has our new cube material. And if I select it, it will highlight it in our project view, letting us know that it's referencing that material. So not too complicated, right? So go ahead and create a few more primitive objects before moving on. You can go to 3D object and create any object you want. You'll see here I just created a capsule. I can move that out and go ahead and create a new material for the capsule. Again, to do that, you simply create a new material by going to create material, and you can name it capsule_matte, and then simply access the standard shader inside of the inspector properties and change the albedo color to something you like. Once you do that, you simply drag and drop it either on the object in the scene view or on the actual object in the hierarchy. Once you have that, you now have two different materials, and you can see how they look in the game view. I'll see you guys in the next video, where we'll actually get started creating our game.